Once upon a time, there was a China-bashing U.S. presidential candidate. A year and a day later, Donald J. Trump feted in Beijing, where he blamed trade imbalances on his predecessors, steering clear of human rights complaints and only really applying pressure on his hosts over North Korea. How much has Trump changed his tune? Trump coming off Election Day setbacks a couple of days back in the United States, hosted by a Xi Jinping, bolstered by a Communist Party Congress that cemented his position as China's most powerful ruler since Mao. The two leaders announcing more than $250 billion worth of business deals, everything from Boeing aircraft to computer chips. Just how interdependent are the world's largest two economies? What's the real balance of power when it comes to trade? Trump still does bilateral agreements, but his next stop on his 10-day regional tour, the Asia-Pacific Summit in Vietnam, will serve as a reminder of his strong dislike for multilateral free trade deals. The first one he tore up when he came into office, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is still alive. Signatories, in fact, may use the summit in Da Nang to announce its implementation with or without the United States. Just how has the region recalibrated in the past year? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Trump in China. With us from New York, Michael Hirson, the Asia Director for the Eurasia Group. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Ralph Winnie of the Eurasian Business Coalition, which partners with Asian and former Soviet republics, is in Washington. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be on.
From Warwick in England, King Wong, who teaches marketing and innovation at Warwick University. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And here in the studio, Théo Clément, Junior Fellow at the University of Lyon's Institute for Far Eastern Studies.
Good evening.
Thanks for being with us. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Formal wear, please. Let's start at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. And at the official banquet, U.S. President Donald Trump introducing a video of his granddaughter Arabella singing in Mandarin. King Wong, how's her Mandarin?
My Mandarin is good.
No, her
I
Mandarin.
can understand.
Her Arabella's.
Her Mandarin.
Yeah.
Her Mandarin is also very impressive. I just watched that video from the beginning to the end, and I have to say it gets better and better as she went on.
What did you make of that? What were you thinking when you saw that was played at the official banquet?
Well, clearly, that certainly showed that President Trump was quite willing to show that he appreciates the culture of China. And he knew President Xi is very proud of the Chinese culture, as President Xi took President Trump to the Forbidden City as the first event after President Trump arrived Beijing. So there is that kind of mutual understanding of where they could agree.
Of where they could agree. So definitely the red carpet being rolled out. Michael Hirson, would you put that clip there on par with a few years back, what we had Australian Prime Minister of the time, Kevin Rudd, giving a speech in Mandarin? Would this be on par with it?
I think so. I think it's a shrewd move. And, President Trump, I think, values his personal relationship with President Xi, and that's what this video is about. And his family has developed a relationship as well with Chinese counterparts. So it's a smart move. It shows some humanity, and, it shows a respect for Chinese culture.
Michael, let's cut to the chase here. What has changed since April when Trump hosted Xi Jinping at his Florida mansion in Mar-a-Lago?
Well, some things have changed, but others really have not. The two key asks that President Trump has for China are still the same, and it's cooperation on North Korea and it's asking China to take deeper measures to correct this structural trade imbalance with the United States. And really, we've seen China make some progress in terms of cooperation on North Korea. On trade, to be honest, it hasn't been that much. And so that was really the ask for this visit. And, we actually are not in much of a different place on those two core issues.
All right, we're going to hear what Donald Trump had to say about trade in a moment. Just first, though, on the issue, Théo Clément, of North Korea, did he press hard enough?
No. Last year, this year in April, he didn't press enough when he met Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago already. But right now, he's being even softer on Xi Jinping.
On North Korea?
On the North Korean issue, he's being even softer on Xi Jinping because he's not pressuring the Chinese. I have to say that I don't blame him because from my perspective, the sanction and the pressure approach on North Korea has proven best case scenario counterproductive, worst case scenario actually very dangerous.
But we have the U.S. Senate, which is perhaps going to tighten the screws, or it's passed a bill that similar to the language we have in a House bill on tightening the screws on Chinese banks that do business with North Korea.
Yes, but the U.S. itself does not have enough leverage on the Chinese economy and on North Korea directly to actually change things when it comes to the nuclear program in the DPRK. China can, but the Chinese government itself might not have the willingness or the ability to actually pressure North Korea.
So the U.S. doesn't have much leverage on China when it comes to North Korea. Ralph Winnie, you agree?
No, I disagree. I think Trump is going to continue to ramp up the rhetoric. And as long as the Chinese believe that Trump is very serious, that it's unacceptable for the North Korean regime to maintain a nuclear weapons program, they're going to continue to exert the pressure on the North Korean government to stand down. It all comes down to perception. If the Chinese and the Russians, for that matter, believe that Trump is serious about taking out the North Korean government, they will feel it's in their interest to ensure that the North Koreans stand down for the maintenance of control, orders, and economic and political stability in the region.
But do you think that with Trump being in Beijing and basically not saying anything to the Chinese about North Korea, that's going to convince the Chinese to exert more pressure on the DPRK?
I think the more that he engages with them on the personal level, as your previous guest discussed, Arabella singing Chinese songs and promoting that intense personal relationship that he and his family have with the region, it's going to lead at some point to results happening. As we've already seen, there is a major trade deal with a state of West Virginia as part of this $250 billion package. As far as North Korea is concerned, again, Trump has been very complimentary of the Chinese involvement in trying to deal with the situation, but that's not going to stop him from ramping up the rhetoric when he gets back home to ensure that the Chinese and the Russians, for that matter, believe that he is serious about his intentions.
Michael Herson, you agree?
Well, I sort of agree and disagree with both of your guests. I think that on the one hand, it is true that President Trump is going to ratchet up the pressure on China. But on the other hand, I'm inclined to agree that the U.S. does have limited leverage, and China believes that it has limited leverage over North Korea. Really where Beijing's red line is, Beijing is willing to incrementally tighten the pressure. And in fact, they've done that in recent months, thanks to the pressure from the Trump administration. But Beijing does not want to go so far as to trigger the collapse of the North Korean regime. They fear the instability that would ensue from that. And that's the line they're walking. And really, from the U.S. perspective, the only way you're going to bring Kim Jong-un and North Korea to the negotiating table is with maximum pressure. And Beijing, I don't think, is willing to go there.
All right. There wasn't, by the way, just singing at the official banquet. There were also toasts.
45 years ago, Nixon visited China. The visit unlocked the door to relations between China and the U.S. As he rightly pointed out before leaving, it was the week that changed the world. Since then, thanks to the joint efforts of several generations of leaders and our people, historic progress has been made, and we have benefited our two countries and indeed changed the world.
Now, talk of Richard Nixon's 1972 breakthrough visit to China has the U.S.'s traditional allies breaking into cold sweats, according to Wall Street Journal columnist Andrew Brown, who argues that the likes of Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and others fear the birth of a new chapter in relations where the Beijing-Washington axis basically dwarfs all else. He writes, such diplomacy would essentially create a G2, the U.S. and China, carving up the globe between them. King Wong, are we headed towards a G2?
Well, yeah, there are all sorts of scary theories around that, and China's rise to economic and political power is unstoppable. And I think that comes to consensus now. But people also know that China has this preference for collaboration, has the preference for, if you like, win-win rather than being confrontational. Therefore, I think it's up to the other countries to decide whether they want to join the club, whether they wanted to be collaborative. Then I think that is the option.
But the theory here,
choose.
But the fear among these countries, like Japan, like South Korea, and some of the smaller nations even, is that once Washington and Beijing agree on stuff, well, they basically have to follow the orders of the concept of this G2. Are we any closer to that?
I wouldn't agree with that. I think the country, the world now is becoming very multi-dimensional, if you like, that no one country should really think that way. And the regional stability and that's why I think President Xi came up with the Belt and Road Initiative, indicating that every country, whether it's big or small, should matter to this world balance. And to come back to the G2, if you like, hypothesis, people know very well this is not going to be like Britain and the UK, or Britain and the US, perhaps. That it's never going to be such a strong bond between two countries with such a different priorities, if you like, and different situations to deal with. The best they could do is to be more collaborative than confrontational, and to keep that. So I think it's very important that two giants, if you like, are actually in a slightly better relationship than in not. So I think that's why President Xi actually took President Trump to the Forbidden City, where actually showed him 3 palaces, which all has the name of harmony of some kind. So I think this is more of saying, let's put aside the differences and try to work on the commonalities.
Michael Herson, are you reassured from what you just heard by King Wong?
Well, I think she's right in that we are headed for a multipolar world, and in fact, we're there already. Certainly, that's how China views the world right now, and they view that as an opportunity as the U.S. steps back from its more expansive role multilaterally and in the international system. She sees that as an opening for China to step forward. But look, I think we're very far away from a G2. I don't think either country feels that it's in their interest to create a G2, and certainly there's not enough trust between the two sides. I mean, behind the personal affinity that we've seen in this visit between President Trump and President Xi, there are some deep underlying issues, particularly on trade and the intersection of trade, technology, and national security that are really moving to the center of the relationship. So I don't think other countries need to worry about a G2. They might need to worry about the uncertainty created from the U.S. stepping back from its global role. But G2, we are not close to seeing.
We're going to pay more attention to trade when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.